What's up, everybody? Yeah, it really is a joy to be with you guys. As Nate said, my name is Michael DeFazio, and I'm going to be with y'all all week, and I'm super pumped about that. I'm extra pumped because here in another day or so, you're actually going to hear from my wife, Beth DeFazio, who's preaching one of these evenings, so it's a family affair. It's going to be fun. And she and I both get to teach here at Ozark, where you guys are on campus, and we love doing what we do here with our students. We have 2 children. Claire is a sophomore in high school, so she's the age of some of you, and then our son Carson is going into 7th grade. And so you could understand why it is deeply meaningful to us to have an opportunity to spend some time with y'all and to open up the Bible and to share some of what God has revealed so that we could walk in the truth that He's made available to us. I do want to be clear about my role this week. Some of y'all have been to Move before. Others of you are new to Move. And so just to kind of make sure you know how the flow works is I'll be up here every morning, and I really have a very simple job, and it's kind of to set up the day. So I'm sort of setting the table so y'all can eat all day long. And I'm going to do that in different ways on different days. Sometimes I might make half of a point and then they'll finish it in the evening, or I might communicate an idea and then they'll build on it with another idea. But other times I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to just let that question linger, and then we're going to answer it that evening. That's my favorite way to do it, and that's kind of what I'm going to do today, is just raise a question. Now, I don't know about y'all. I love questions. I love all sorts of questions, really. I like asking even shallow questions like, what's your favorite ice cream, or what's the name of the street you grew up on? I think these things are fun to talk about. I like deep questions that really make you think, like, what are you afraid of, or who do you want to be in 10 years? I like riddles. Any of y'all like riddles? Are y'all riddle people? 4 of you. Great. Okay. Well, everybody else can just lean in and bear with us this morning. I got a few riddles for you. We're just going to kind of make sure that we're all geared up and rolling. So I'm going to ask a question. I want you to pause for a moment if you know it, and then I'm going to do a countdown, and we'll say the answer together. So here's the first one for you. It's going to come up on the screen. The first riddle is, what is yours, but other people use it more than you do? Hold on. Some of you know this one. Take your time. All right. I'm going to let the others think. All right, I'm going to do a 1, 2, 3, and then you can say it out loud. 1, 2, 3. Your name, you guys all know it. Okay, good. Let's see if you can get the next one. Here's another one for you. Can you name 3 consecutive days without using the words Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? Hang on, don't say it if you know it. Can you name 3 consecutive days without saying the words Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? I asked this to somebody recently, and they were like, is there another day we don't know about? Good question. No. All right, who knows it? Who thinks they know this one? You know it right there, holler it out. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Well done. Everybody give her a hand. Awesome. Okay, I got one more for you. Now this one you can just holler out in time, all right? So I'm going to start the thing and you can just finish it. All right, here you go. The riddle is, David's dad had 3 sons, Snap, Crackle, and... Yeah, somebody said pop real loud. I appreciate you going for it, brother, but the answer is indeed David. So... I like questions, though, and like I said, I like questions that make you think, and there really is one big question that I want us to kind of, we're gonna ask this morning, and it's the question I want to leave you with. Now, I thought about just dropping it on you right up front here. I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to be mysterious, but I want to hang on to it for a minute. I want to work our way toward it so that you're ready for it when we get there. But I will ask you another one to kind of move us ahead. It's a question that I think is always worth asking. It's the question, what do you most need right now? That's a question that'll make you think. It's a good question. It's a little bit of a tricky question to ask of a room this size, because there's a lot of people in this room, and we're not all the same. We got a lot of differences. We're from different places. We have different bodies. We occupy different social locations. Some of us are boys, some of us are girls. We have different races, different ages, all sorts of differences, different problems that we left at home or brought with us, different distractions that are going to try to get our attention this week. And so there's a lot of differences between us, and yet at the same time, we have other things in common. For one thing, we all live in 2025, which is not nothing, and that probably means that we know what it is to be tired. Can I get an amen? How many of y'all have, at some point in the last 6 months, utilized some form of caffeine, sugar, or be it coffee, tea, you guys already hands are up, soda, energy drinks to keep you going? Yeah, most of us have, because we live in a world that just grinds, and we're supposed to grind with it. We're just supposed to keep rolling, keep pace, you know? Sometimes it's not even just the physical tiredness. I would imagine that a lot of y'all growing up as young people today are pushed to just keep going. But there's also a weariness that comes with trying to follow Jesus in a world that doesn't make that easy. I would imagine that it's not the same for every person in the room, but I think as a general rule, y'all got it harder than I did when I was your age. If you're going to try to live by biblical convictions and abide biblical values and be a godly person according to Scripture, you're going to be on the outside often. You're going to be made to feel like you're an alien, a stranger, a weirdo, and there may even be further hardships that you face. And so I would guess that there's a lot of you, at least some of you who have come in here, whether you succeeded or failed this year is not my point right now. You got to that point where you're just weary in following Jesus. And this is not just something that you have in common with each other. This is something that we have in common with the Hebrews, the people that this letter was written to a long time ago. They were Hebrew Christians, which means Jewish Christians. And as Brad talked about last night, and you've heard, they were followers of Moses, followers of the Old Testament, followers of the law. And then Jesus came, and they realized that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. And they're like, this is amazing, this is awesome, this is what we've been waiting for. And then they started following Jesus, and all of a sudden life got harder. And they're like, man, this is exhausting. I talked about how the emoji would probably be the sleeping one. I actually would change it a bit. You know that one where it's just like the ugh face, where it's just the weary, just face down, eyes down? That's the feeling that we get when we read Hebrews, and some of y'all know what that's like. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but if you've ever been walking on a journey and you got tired, we have this natural tendency to look down, right? If you're hiking or you're trying to get somewhere and you're tired, your body starts to slip and you just look down, which I think is probably why the central message of the book of Hebrews is look up, eyes up, to the skies, to the prize, to Jesus. Look at him. And I want to show this to you as a thread that runs throughout the whole book. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up to Hebrews. And if you don't have a Bible, or if you're not yet used to figuring out your way through a Bible, you can look on the Bible app, or honestly, I'm going to put the verses up on the screen today, and find me or somebody this week. We would love to help you figure out what it means when we say weird things like look up Hebrews 1, 2, or whatever it is. But I do want to read a few things for you from Hebrews, and I'm going to start right with the beginning of the book. You see from the jump that this is a book that draws our attention to Jesus. Here's how the author begins his book. Hebrews 1:1. He says, in the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he also made the universe. The Son, talking about Jesus, is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. Now, you're not supposed to fully understand everything you read in a statement like that. But the reason why the author starts that way is he's saying, hey, we're going to look at Jesus, and we're going to look real close. Turn a page to the beginning of chapter 3, verse 1. We're going to come back to this passage here in a second, so keep your finger in this page. Chapter 3, verse 1 says something pretty similar. It's kind of the theme verse of the whole book. It says, therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, that's you guys, followers of Jesus. It says, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. This assumes that there's going to be other things trying to get into our thoughts. And it's about steadying your gaze. It's about focusing your attention. Fix your thoughts on Jesus. And if you keep going in the book, you'll find that that same theme kind of holds all the way to the end. If you flip toward the end of it, you'll find in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, something that speaks very similarly. The author says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. Hebrews is trying to draw our attention to Jesus because Hebrews is suggesting something to you. And what Hebrews is suggesting to you is that what we always need most is a clear vision of Jesus. A lot of needs in this room. But what Hebrews suggests is no matter what your other needs are, what you always need more than anything else is to see Jesus clearly. Well, it's not the only thing you need, it's just the thing you need most. If you're dying of thirst and you got a dirty shirt, you need a clean shirt, but more than that, you need a drink of water. You know what I'm saying? And Hebrews says what you need more than anything else is to see Jesus clearly. I don't know if you've ever thought about the importance of seeing, but seeing is huge. Like 80% of our memories are what we see. Now, your smells recall memories, and you can hear certain things in a memory, but if I said to you, tell me a story about when you were in the 4th grade, you probably picture some part of your life in the 4th grade, maybe the home you grew up in, or maybe the classroom in your school, because memories is driven by sight. Really, sight probably does more to help us interpret the world than the other 4 senses combined. And I think this is why the eye is such a wild thing. It's such a fascinating organ. There's so many interesting things about it. There are over 2 million parts to each of your eyeballs, and it takes over half of your brain to see anything at all. Y'all have heard of like a heart transplant or a lung transplant or a kidney transplant, yeah? You ever heard of an eye transplant? No, you haven't, because it can't be done. because there's over 1 million little nerve fibers connecting the eye to your brain, and we still don't have the skills or the technology to be able to reproduce this sort of thing. It's impossible because the eye is that intricately designed for what it does. It's protected too. It's placed in this socket so that it stays out of the elements. You got eyebrows over top to keep the sweat and the dirt out, and it's covered by the fastest muscle in the human body. It's called the orbicularis. It's what you use to blink. It's almost like God gave us this signal that what we see matters, and that's true, because what you look at determines your destiny. That's true. What you look at decides where you go, because what you look at determines the world that you see, and the world that you see is going to help you take the next step, and the next step you take is going to turn you into a certain kind of person, and who you become is where you end up. What you look at determines your destiny, which is why what you always need most is the clear vision of Jesus. And yet this gets us to the point where I want to raise the question I want you to think about today. And the question is very simple, but very important. What if Jesus is better than you think? Because I'm up here talking about how, hey, you know, what you need more than anything is to see Jesus. And I wonder how that's hitting you. I wonder if I could tap into your mind and heart. Like, what are you thinking when I make this suggestion? Because I'd imagine there's a lot of different responses in the room. And I'm not trying to box you in because you're a unique person, but I'd imagine that there's some of you in the room who you're not a church kid. You didn't grow up in church. You didn't grow up with God. Maybe you came with a friend or you're just checking this out. And there's probably a part of you that thinks, yeah, this Jesus thing is fine for them, but I'm not sure it's for me. And first of all, I understand why you would think that if you didn't grow up with this. But what I want to suggest to you is I'm not going to try to change your mind right now. I'd just like you to ask the question, like, why not? Why isn't this for you? And are you sure? Like, what if Jesus is better than you think? What if there's more to him than you've even actually considered before this week? That's why you're here. And for a lot of y'all, I imagine a lot of y'all are church kids. You grew up in church, you grew up with these things, and so I say, Jesus is amazing, and you're like, yeah, for sure, I get it. All right, let's move on to something else. And I'm not knocking you. This is a pretty natural response, but what can happen to you is as much of a gift as it is to grow up in church, and thank God that you've grown up around his people. There's also a danger there, because what can happen is you can kind of put Jesus in a box. It's almost like you can get vaccinated against the real Jesus. You all know how vaccinations work, right? Like they put a little bit of the sickness into your bloodstream so that your system can get used to it, so that when the real disease shows up, your system is protected against it. You can fight it off. And that's good when it comes to diseases, but it's not great when it comes to Jesus. And what can happen if you grow up in church is you get a little bit of Jesus in your soul stream. And you learn to kind of put him in this box over here. And your system is actually defended against him, so that when the real Jesus shows up, you can kind of push him away and not let him all the way into your heart. And that can happen to you. And what I'm trying to do right now is not to make you feel bad about something, but I'm trying to invite you to ask the question. Even if you think you know Jesus, what if Jesus is better than you think? I do think the book of Hebrews knows that we're going to wonder. It knows that we're going to wrestle with this idea. We're going to push back a little bit on the idea that Jesus is the most important thing for us to think about. And this is why Hebrews doesn't just like make the claim that Jesus is great. It invites us to compare him. It invites us to compare him to whatever else we may think is worthwhile. Let me come back to this passage I read a little bit of a moment ago in Hebrews chapter 3. I read verse 1 to you, and I want to reread that, but I also want to look at the rest of the paragraph. Hebrews chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. A lot of details in these passages we're going to read in Hebrews. So try not to try to figure out every detail the first time. Try to get the big picture of what's going on. Here's what it says. Therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. He was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in all God's house. Jesus has been found worthy of greater honor than Moses, just as the builder of a house has greater honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything. Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. But Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house, and we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. The word that I want you to notice that came up a couple of times is the word greater. Did you see that? Everybody say greater. Just making sure you're with me. Greater is the word that you're going to see multiple times in the book of Hebrews. 13 times this word is used. Greater, better, superior. And this word is used over and over and over because Hebrews is inviting you to compare Jesus. What else might be worth your time, attention, affection, love, and trust? It's sort of like Hebrews is playing a little game of this or that. You know what I'm talking about? where somebody gives you two pictures and they ask you to choose which one of these is better for you? You feel that? You know that game yet? Well, let's do it a little bit. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to show you pictures, and I want you to tell me which of these you think is greater. So we'll start with some classic examples. The first one is beach or mountains. So kind of like before, I'm going to count to 3, and then I want you to say beach or mountain, and whichever one, we'll see who can win, right? So beach or mountains. 1, 2, 3. A lot of mountains. So I don't know if it's just because you're louder or because there's more, but mountains seem to be winning. I did hear a couple of beaches over here, so that's always a good thing. Here's another one. This is a classic. Waffles or pancakes? Y'all are already ready, okay? 1, 2, 3. That was pretty mixed. I do think pancakes takes it, although personally I'm a fan of waffles. I won't hold it against you. Couple more. Here's one for you. Taylor Swift or Kendrick Lamar, all right? So, I thought you might have an opinion on this. We'll see about the voices that end up on both sides of this one. On 3, so Taylor or Kendrick, that's what you're going to say. 1, 2, 3. Taylor! Okay, yep, that is as predicted. And last one for you, I'm curious what you think of this one. I think one of these came up a moment ago. Birks or Crocs? All right, now Birks can be sandals or clogs. It's up to you. All right, on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, a lot of Crocs. I would go socks or no socks, but I'm pretty sure I know what all of you think, so we'll keep the dogs covered for today. But you get it, like certain things are more important to us than other things. And what Hebrews invites us to do in passages like this and others is to ask, Jesus or what? And most of the book actually is focused on Moses. Jesus or Moses? Now I get, and we get, that that's probably not something that you guys struggle with. It's probably not, you don't sit around going, I wonder who I should commit myself to because I've got Jesus on the one hand or Moses on the other. You know, like probably not a thing. Like I know one of the things that happens, I'm not smiling to make light of it, it's serious moments. One of the things that happens a lot of times at a week of Move is you guys, it gives you an opportunity to come clean in front of each other, in front of a safe place where you can say, here's some of the things I struggle with. You guys have been part of this before. I've been a part of these for years, and I've led some and participated in others where you're just confessing different sins. I don't know how many times I've been in a situation where a group of Jesus followers were confessing sins to each other. And I've never heard anybody say, young or old, I've never heard anybody say, and I'm really just loving Jesus and everything, but I'm kind of tempted to love Moses more. You know, like, that's not a thing that we struggle with. But it was a big deal to them. And it's not that hard to understand why. Moses was a big deal to them. And if you back up and think about it, you know that every culture we have like our iconic people. You know, we have our heroes. Like you think about the GOAT debates that happen among different generations in our world. Like I would imagine that there are some of y'all in the room who are under the impression that LeBron is the greatest basketball player of all time. Probably so. Good. There are wiser men in the room who agree that it's Michael, you know? So there you go. But we sort of talk through these things like who's actually greater, whether it's music or sports or whatever. And yet, I want to make sure that we're clear and connecting this to, most of us don't really care that much about the GOAT debates, but you do have people that you look up to. And that's actually part of the question here is who do you look up to? And how high do you regard them? And maybe it's your friends, or maybe it's somebody in school, maybe it's an upperclassman, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your youth minister or your pastor or whatever it is. But one of the things that you need to understand about getting closer to God is that when you first start to take God seriously, y'all know how this is. The first thing you tend to do is you get rid of all the bad things in your life. And that's hard to do. There's no question. Letting go of some of those addictions that you know need to go. And you feel shame each time you participate in them. You got to get rid of the bad stuff, but there's more work to be done as you become a full you, and that is recognizing that growth isn't always about getting rid of the bad stuff. It's about putting the good things in proper order. Because even after you've gotten rid of a bunch of bad habits in your life, there still is the possibility that you're putting something good above God. That you're actually putting more trust or more love or more affection or more of your well-being in the hands of somebody other than God. And the answer is not to like love your parents less or love your youth minister less or love your friends less. It's just to love God more. It's to put things back in proper order. And that's what they were wrestling with. These Hebrews, they're going, man, we're like, Jesus is fine, but maybe Moses was actually better. And it's understandable for them that they would think this because Moses was everything to them historically. Moses is the one who, you may not know this, Moses is the one who years and years ago, centuries before this time, God's people were enslaved for 400 years, and then Moses was the one God sent to bring freedom to them. And as you saw in the video, to give them the law and to help guide them through the wilderness. Moses was their George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Martin Luther King Jr. all rolled into one. So it's understandable why they might look at him and say, he's maybe the one that we should give our attention to. And Hebrews is consistently clear that Jesus is categorically superior. He's always better. Now, I'm not trying to argue the point yet. I really just want to raise the question. What if that's true? What if Jesus is that good? What if he's greater than what you love, what you trust, what you fear? What if Jesus is categorically superior? What if Jesus is better than you think?